camera and the desktop. And so it's going to be a little different from my understanding, but it may be very different. So I still have the chat open, but I definitely want to be able to yeah, just converse. You guys can come off of mute, but I don't see anybody currently, so I'm not sure who's on and who's off. But if any, okay, let me know if you guys can hear me. I do see the chat. Okay, can you guys hear me now? Okay, yes, I know she has on the mic too. How's it going on your end, Alkeisha? All right, let me know if you guys can check in, just again how things have been going, what's been going on. Cool, cool. Okay, just for the time being, I did want to just chime in about the discussion that we had with Mr. Josh Lee last week. So, one, I was super grateful that he came and talked with us. One thing that he spoke to, which was the perspective that we should have when conversing with and then working with funders. Um, from, if you will, having honestly, maybe for lack of better terms, like maybe a beggar's perspective or outlook on the situation. We're going there to get help because we can't get it any other way. And we're trying our best to appease them, give them the best type of perception of what we're doing and who we are, versus one who goes, I'm acknowledging that we are asking for money, but it is not because um, we shouldn't have it. It is not because we are not owed, and it is not in broader perspective goes, and it is not because the economic status that I have or that we have um, is because of it was due to just means, right? One thing that we recognize about American history is that a lot of the wealth that has been acquired has been acquired through, I would say, very inexplicit oppressive means, and sometimes not so explicit oppressive means. But nonetheless, the fact that the Black community has the money that it has is by no means a result of just practices. Is by no means a result of completely um, equal treatment and or um, um, let's say management of the finances that we have. So it brings up the question, or rather the book that I read once upon a time. I don't know if you have heard of it. It is called The Color of Money. Um, and so with that being said, The Color of Money is one in which it, if you will, catalogs the history of wealth, if you will, the history of Black people and wealth in that relationship and lack thereof. It pays special attention to the policies around our liberation, the policies around, if you will, the emancipation, which is not liberation, but the economic policies that impacted our emancipation, and the, if you will, the business sector and how we have been um, selectively excluded from the business communities, the banking communities, the banking establishment, whether it's them using our money um, and housing our money safely versus housing or even allowing us to become bankers, right? Even allowing us to open banks, even allowing us to have money in great sums, and that being, if you will, allowed and protected inside of their institution. So, all that to say is that so much of the money that was ours, could have been ours, should have been ours, has been taken away in many different ways. And it is not just one, it's not by just one industry. And so, in light of the conversation that Josh had with us about the money that we don't have or that we're asking for, it definitely speaks to the fact that, and to a very great degree, we could approach this fundraising as a means to get what is rightfully ours, as a means to get what could be and should be in our community as it is, right? Well, we recognize, coming from the neighborhoods that we come from, living in the neighborhoods that we're used to living in, is that our neighborhoods don't have the resources that they could have. They don't have the resources that they should have, and that these resources and lack thereof is what contributes to not just the conditions, but the outcomes, right? Contributes to the cultures, contributes to the behaviors, and, if you will, the epidemics that we fall victim to, the activities that we seem to be um, drawn toward, whether it's the burglaries and the thievery, whether it's the gang violence and the drug dealing, and so on and so forth. All these things can be um, connected to our economic status, and our economic status is definitely 100% connected to the way that African Americans have been treated, not only by the government, because that's one thing, but the private sector, right? So whether we're talking about insurance industries, whether we're talking about the banking industry, whether we're talking about, who's hiring and what type of positions are they allowing us to have, all these types of things contribute to the reason why we're even asking them for money in the first place. Being that we don't have it, but then also contributing to the fact that we are in situations where we do need nonprofit organizations to help rebuild things within our communities that either were once alive, are no longer alive, or needing to make things that were never in our community, because there are certain things that again, we have been excluded from. And so, one, with that being said, I definitely want to check in and chime in on and get your thoughts on how this can and does influence our attitude around fundraising, not just with grant writing, because that's one way, but even again connecting with funders, reaching out to funders, again, being connected to the philanthropic organizations and foundations that are out there, and or reaching out by other means on the internet and things like this. And so definitely want to know your thoughts, yeah, and how we can be again to put some of these things to action for the sake of our the longevity of our organizations.
Jermaine,
Yes.
I like to, I also think we need to add to that list so that there is a form of accountability on our own part, not just how others treat us and systemic racism and policy and advocacy and funding but how we also treat ourselves, because
Mm,
that's a big part of it. We
mm,
really can't change yesteryear. It has come, it has gone. But oftentimes I'm in a lot of meeting and the only discussion is, you know, what others are doing to us. And I
mm,
think added to that equation should also include what we are doing to us so that
mm,
we are looking at a comprehensive approach, because we really can't change others, but we can change how we collaborate, how we partner, our Black on Black crime.
mm,
Because I think for me, when I get into other meetings, we talk all around police brutality and racism, but we never, ever have any conversations around our Black on Black crime, which is
mm,
what we're dealing with here and now, believing that a lot of the oppression and gentrification and marginalization of our community has a big effect on that. But you have to also include what you do to yourself.
yeah, right.
Uh, just as a point of my own thought, that when we're looking at what has happened to us, we also have to be accountable for what we've done also to ourselves.
Right, right. And I hear that. I think definitely personal accountability is a big thing. Definitely a big thing that I hear that is, how those can not, if you will, coexist in those meetings, right? It's like either we're talking about the source being someone else, or we're in a meeting where we're talking about, the source of the issues being ourselves. But rarely do we have the conversation where all those things are taken into account in the same meetings. I have been part of the programs here at YCD where we are talking about recidivism. We are talking about, the statistics around, the folks who get justice involved, arrested and so forth in junior high school and high school, things around, the GEDs and, education and lack thereof. So there's definitely space for that, not only in, I would say in those rooms, but it definitely takes a person and a group of people who acknowledge, the extent to which, they've contributed it to the problems, right, that they see in the neighborhoods, the things that they've seen that also contribute to the problems in the neighborhood. There's so much of when it comes to that relationship of what's seen and what's not seen, what we can see oftentimes is what we do to one another. And what's hard to see is what's happening also behind the scenes that's contributing to our circumstances. So I definitely hear
Well, I'm just saying it's
that.
also part of the conversation. None of it negates what has been done to us But I
Mhm.
also believe, just for instance, what happened at like What's the Scoop, how that a black owned business was often broke into by black people, understanding homelessness, poverty, and everything, but we just always can't go on only pointing fingers, and we have to also look at us. And I just wanted to share this. I had a conversation we had with our seniors and some of our younger adult staff. And when the younger, not just staff, we were doing a focus group. This was all around COVID vaccination and our young men, our young black men who were not taking the vaccine. And we were in no means trying to persuade anyone. We were trying to engage in a conversation. And it came to economics, and the young man said, I ain't working for the white man, and I ain't paying no being paid minimum wage. So as long as we're only talking not gonna work for the white man and minimum wage, we never got to the question that you standing on a corner selling dope. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
Mhm.
we
Mhm.
have to also add to the conversation what we also do to ourselves.
Mhm.
Because as long as we keep deflecting and kicking it down the street and hoping somebody picks it up and have accountability, we're still never finding out what we can do for ourselves to stop the conditions by which um, we're living with, which I agree has all of the factors which you first started on. But
Mhm.
sometimes the conversation has to start right here on this block, on this corner, because a lot of our youngsters didn't live through slavery. They don't barely know Martin Luther King. Damn sure don't know Shaman Waltons. You understand what I'm saying? They're so
Mhm.
disconnected from the reality of while we're all here looking to come together. um, I mean, of course, they know Martin Luther King, but if you ask them some real questions, they don't know. But a lot of them are
Right.
educated. But we were like talking around the conversation, and the real conversation was, brother, why are you out here on the block? And
Yeah.
we can keep talking about what happened to his great grandfather, grandfather, father, so on and so forth. But the real issue is here in 2023. Why are you there? To really find the solutions by which we can begin to build on. So I just think that it's, in all of our conversations, we also need to have a bullet point of self infliction
Mhm.
as well, just
Right.
to make
Right.
it a dynamic conversation.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to ask because I have been in certain spaces where that is the conversation. Um, and so much so where we ain't even talking about the history, right? Like, what's up? What you about to do? Like, that's the only conversation. And so, I do want to ask: have you been in spaces, and what spaces have you been in where it's all in there? Like, yeah, we're going to acknowledge, if you will, systemic oppression, and we're also going to acknowledge discipline. We're also going to acknowledge, what's up with your vision board? What are your plans for the coming, let's say, year, but we could even say 5 years. Have you been in those spaces, and where, yeah, what spaces do take the time to kind of acknowledge it all?
And I don't know who else is in here, so I don't want to monopolize the conversation. I only see
I
one
hear that.
person, but it could be, um, you know, but I haven't been in, I've yet to be in a space where we be in 100, as we call it in our community, and
Mm-hmm.
in looking at a multi-pronged approach where self-accountability is also in there. I'm
Hmm.
often in conversations where we're talking about systemic racism, oppression, depression, recession, and all of the sessions. I'm very rarely in a conversation when we're talking about our here and our now, our Black community in a space of what we can do, not
Mhm.
in a space of what others have done to us. And
Right,
in
right.
those spaces, because no one want to call out anybody. You know how we're crabs in a bowl, all fighting for one pot of money, and really instead of forming the collective to get the pot of money and make sure that we all eat. A
Right.
lot of that is we say it, but we really don't see it on the ground. And it's that disconnect to me that
Mhm.
we say we have to collaborate. Those collaborations don't really manifest or materialize, and we're not calling out the why. Why
Right.
are the same people eating and why are the same people not? And how do we have all of these Black organizations and still have Black nonprofits have no funding and don't have this and don't have that? Like, we have to come to our own rescue, but not just in lip service. And so I'm yet to really, and this just me, not that I attend everything, but I'm yet to get into a meeting where we're calling each other out in a positive, honest, reflective of our here and now, and can look and say without it being calling each other out, but not pointing a finger.
Right, right. You
But
know,
really talking about the like the real, I'm talking about in 2023, not in 1923. You understand what I'm saying? We
I do.
often want to go back to 1933 or 200 years ago in our slavery, and then I'm talking about under a Black administration. There's people who's eating, and then I get on meetings and there's people who still not eating, and how within our own race and Black community, how we still have such a disparity even within the Black community of people, let alone businesses. How are some Black businesses surviving and others are failing, and how we bridging the gap so that we could have many Black businesses. This isn't, I'm not relating this conversation to me or my business. I'm just saying I've yet to get into a meeting where we're calling out the system around looking at how are we ourselves addressing diversity, equity, inclusion within our own Black community,
Mhm.
not how others should be treating us, but how we should be treating. We often aren't supporting other Black businesses. Our communities aren't supporting Black businesses. And then the question is why?
Yeah.
And I have yet to get into a meeting to um, explore the why in order to come up with the solution so that our Black nonprofits, our Black businesses are also thriving and not just here on name only and then really failing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So
I hear that. And there's a part I do want to throw out a couple of names and things that I've seen. So um honestly, so the first name I want to throw out there is his name is Eric Thomas. And I'm pretty sure I may have used like some of his videos, but he's a motivational speaker, two, an entrepreneur, and has connected with his business not only um, a number of businesses, but also as a speaker and businessman. He does a lot to help other people who are in the vein of creating their own businesses, which in by practice and by some respect necessity, there's a lot of businesses working together just to make what he does work. Whether it's he needs somebody to do graphic design, he needs somebody to help out with the real estate stuff, or somebody who helps out with websites. And so there's all these businesses that are working together by virtue of, if you will, a community that's being created, as well as the just the business that they already run. But by virtue of the motivational speaking, it brings, I mean, for me personally, it was one of the very few spaces where I was hearing like, you know, what I want to say, no disrespect to anyone else or what everybody else is doing, but what are you about to do and how are you handling your business? And this is coming from a place where I was really connected to like the faith space. So a lot of it was like, what God's going to do, and what, we can expect miracles, from God and things like this, even being connected to other spaces where we're talking about what the government needs to do, and what would happen if we had a systemic change in policies around in America. But it was definitely a unique energy, and I mean, just acknowledging kind of what you were saying, like it is hard to find not only speakers but spaces in which the crowd is literally on that same page of like, okay, how can we work together? How can we improve ourselves? How can we become more marketable? How can we become better at what we already do? And it's keeps coming back to this part of like, don't be complaining about you don't get this opportunity when you haven't pursued this, or you haven't given this a shot, or you've only been doing this for 2 years, but you're expecting to be national for all intents and purposes. And so it was not was, but because he still does speaking and still does events, but it is a unique type of experience. Um, it is a unique type of experience, and if you will, culture and perspective to actually be in a space where people are talking about like it's on us, like it's not on no one else. And so that is one. I want to acknowledge that that is one, a unique space. It is something that two is out there, but I will acknowledge it is hard to find, and it is not, as you can imagine, not super popular to just take complete ownership of the situation and say like, if they never help us out, how are we still going to be rich, right? How are we still going to be successful? How are we still going to take care of ourselves if they never come in and do anything for us? So um, I want, I'll also just say, well, along with that, Jamal King is someone that he's connected to that is big on real estate. And because he's big on real estate, he talks a lot about how he's made a whole lot of money with real estate and has some big dreams, big goals. They're actually currently working on like a skyscraper project with a number of other Black real estate entrepreneurs, and they talk too a lot about it's out there, it's available, we just have to make the right efforts, give the necessary time and energy, get around the right people and so forth, and a lot can happen. And again, coming from experience versus this is what someone told him, but just saying this is what helped me to get to where I got economically and socially. And so I definitely get that. Yeah, that's hard to find, but it is out there in those spaces too. Um, but and even to that point, I think that there is a part in what we're doing, not only as the Level Up program, but even when it comes to the Dream Keepers initiative. I think a lot of the people in it are saying, "Hey, we have to have our own organization, we have to have our own business, we have to have our own." Meetings in which we're working with each other, we're collaborating and helping one another out. So I definitely feel like this can be a catalyst to having conversations and more of those meetings where we are helping each other out and trying to figure out what's in our way. But I definitely feel like a lot is out there if we just take the time to um, I would say either look for it, or if we are so fortunate for it to happen upon us and actually notice that, oh man, like I did run into someone who was doing this program or doing this event where it was all about Black people taking that ownership, and not expecting much from the systems that have oppressed us historically. Yeah, yeah. I know Dame Dash came to town 2 weeks ago. I did attend this meeting, and he's someone that has had that perspective and has been promoting that perspective of, I got to do what I got to do, and I will do it, for my own liberation and for my own freedom, for my family, and things like this. And he's been, YouTube and on television, and different folks who have large platforms talking about his relationship to business, why he does it, how he does it, and how, a lot of people can get a lot of, um, make a lot of headway if they were to practice some of the things that he's speaking upon. It also brings up the name 19 Keys that he has had a national tour with, in which he's talking to a lot of Black folks about, again, taking ownership. But I think that that's a big, um, yeah, it's a space that we have to literally look for, and try our best to find, sometimes virtually, before we can find it in a local community, or somewhere here in the Bay Area.
I find the term taking. I do understand accountability, but I still find the term like taking ownership. It takes me back to Martin Luther King's "How do a bootless," they say pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And how do a bootless man pull himself up by his bootstraps? So
Mhm.
that means that we're still ignoring the first condition, take ownership by people who don't own anything.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's to me a false premonition. Take ownership for people who don't own anything. Pull your stuff up by your bootstraps, but you don't have no boots. So
Right. Right.
we coin phrases and then we're not talking about the why you don't own anything. We're just saying take ownership.
Mhm.
You do not expect people who rent to ever take care of the house that they don't own. You get people who do, but you really should not expect it. You almost could walk into a community and know when you have renters.
Right.
You could
Mhm.
walk into a community and know when it's Section 8. And I'm not
Mhm.
I come from the hood and the projects. So again, the taking ownership, I understand it. I'm also a homeowner. But
Mhm.
when you're talking to ownershipless people about taking ownership, you kind of got to start back to the where are you and why before you ever could talk about ownership.
Right.
I
Right.
like the theory around I work with older adults, and as they start to not remember and have signs of dementia and Alzheimer's, part of the way to reach them is to be on their journey. So they may wake up and think that they want to be in Mexico and you're trying to give them medicine. And while you keep saying, Mr. Z, let me give you your shot. And he says, I don't want the shot, but I want to go. You have to get on their journey in order to relate to them and then
Mm.
give them their medication. Half the
Mm.
families are like fighting with the senior to give them their medication. But if you join the journey, meeting them, like the real part of meeting them where they at, and you're on their journey because they in their mind they're on their way to wherever they're going. So if you get on their road and on their journey, now you can talk to them.
All right. Mhm. Mhm.
Anyway, I'm done. I don't want to
Interesting.
take over conversations, but I just feel serious about the conversation that you're having, but serious about the conversations that I consider us not having. Not that the content is not available.
Mhm. Right. Right.
Oftentimes, even let's just use some of the things that we deal with to overcome poverty. let's just say you need GA, you need income, so you got to get GA, and they say go online and do an application. But if you don't have access to a computer and technology, saying, oh, just apply for housing, but
Mm,
you not connected to a laptop, or it doesn't matter that it's free in the library. So you understand what I'm saying? So
mhm.
just saying it
Right.
sounds so easy to people who are connected, but when let's say without a home, and your whole job as soon as you wake up is how are you finna survive, just because it's you can go to the library for free around your other priorities of, is my stuff gonna get stolen today? Where can I eat? I didn't get to take my medication. My diabetes, my insulin wasn't refrigerated, and now the fact that the library is free and you could get a sounds easy depending upon what you're juggling every day is what I'm saying. So
Mhm.
I work with seniors and they say, oh, they could go online, but my seniors aren't connected because they're 89 and they're not even afraid of all that they're hearing about hacking and jacking and this and viruses. So
Mhm.
saying go online is easy to say. It's yes,
Right.
at your fingertips, but when you don't have internet and a device and you are technology hesitant, it,
Mhm.
you're far away from it.
Right.
Own your own home and all the things, but hey, just sign up is can be a big factor.
Right.
No matter that you could go to the library for free. So I'm not saying things aren't available, but we're not addressing that why and that how.
Right.
That's it.
Right. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Because you know it firsthand. You know how a lot of folks don't not only feel comfortable, but
Trust the systems and trust the people,
mhm.
and even after I trust you, I still somebody hacked me and still steal my money, and so it's not always about trust.
Right. 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 Yeah. And I've heard about it too
From
with some of the
COVID because of
folks that know a lot
vaccine
about technology
hesitancy.
still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's like we didn't overcome COVID and overcome vaccine hesitancy because they made more vaccine. We
Right.
began to overcome it because we can connect people to the here and now. That if you catch it and take it home to your grandmother and then she passes away because her immune system, we have to make it personal for people, and then
Uh-huh.
they could take ownership.
Right. 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 Right.
You have to
And
overcome the hesitancy or the disqualifier, the numerator, point out some other things to bring people closer so that then they can understand, oh, you could just apply for housing at Dahlia. That don't mean something to that means nothing to someone who's not connected to technology, need housing now. Dahlia means it's online. I'm on a wait list. You know what I'm saying? It that
yeah.
doesn't equate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. It's all good. It's all good. Again, I know Alkeisha's here. I believe she's the only other participant here. Alkeisha, are you there? Can you chime in at all? Yeah, she may not be audible at the moment, but definitely, yeah, this is definitely a conversation that will be ever present because I feel like in the spaces where there is a lot of accountability and a lot of people taking ownership of our actions, our time, our the resources that we do have, the relationships that we have, how we're treating people, and all these things. When I am in those spaces, there often is um, a lack of attention paid to the history, the oppression, and so on and so forth. And then when I am in spaces where we do pay attention to the oppression and the history, we don't have a lot of discussions around, okay, but what are you going to do? What can we do together? What can we do collectively to improve our situations despite those things that we just acknowledged and we just gave attention to? Another group that I know that I found myself listening to and paying attention to that seeks to acknowledge what's going on, what has happened, as well as how can we really prosper in this current moment is Earn Your Leisure. Earn Your Leisure has been an organization or a business that has talked heavily about financial literacy, as well as taking time to have those folks on the shows, those conversations that talk about why financial literacy is not only important, but why it hasn't been, why isn't it more widely understood amongst not only African Americans, but people of color as well. And so, not only having come into contact with those folks, they have had a couple events here in the East Bay. I went to one a couple years ago on my birthday, actually. I was like, I have to go. I know it's not a celebration, but it is because these people are actually here in the Bay Area. But it is a matter of not only getting connected to these spaces, but staying connected, finding ways to attend their events, finding ways to create community with the people who have attended the events. The folks that honestly I'm imagining we find ourselves in these rooms with when we do have these events for DKI will most likely be at some of the other events in the neighborhoods who are saying, how do we, take more responsibility for what's happening and how do we impact what's happening around these neighborhoods that we grew up in and so forth. So definitely know that it's there. Just simply a matter of pursuing that perspective and pursuing that type of environment that in many respects empowers us to say we don't just have to sit back and acknowledge what has happened and feel like we're just victims of what we've seen in the history of the United States, but to say we can also be the engines of change. We can actually be the prototypes. We can show other people the way. We can, do our best in these different ways, not only to excel at work, but also excel in having the relationships in the community that help us rather than hinder us or hurt us on our paths and on other people's paths towards having a more not only successful but a healthy life, healthy lifestyle, healthy family, and things like that. I know Donovan just hopped on. Donovan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, just wanted to kind of get your thoughts. I know we were just talking about the conversation we had last week with Josh that spoke a lot to the history of the United States and, if you will, the history of wealth and how a lot of the wealth has been intentionally kept out of our community. And what could and should be our response to those types of things. I do see Maria's here as well. But yeah, just wanted to get your thoughts on any spaces that you've seen people, taking, if you will, responsibility for making change in our community, not only socially or, dealing with some of maybe the issues that are in our community, but also taking personal responsibility for being a person that employs the habits, the activities, the behaviors that need to that ultimately do bring about the change in our families and in our community. Have you seen groups or spaces where people are intentionally, making those efforts?
Are you asking me? Sorry.
Both of you and Donovan. You
Oh,
guys
okay.
are on.
I'll just say really quickly, yes, and I I I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Like, I particularly grew up in San Francisco, and particularly I grew up in San Francisco in the 80s and 90s, and I think there is not enough recognition towards community groups that honestly don't always have a big name, and they don't always have, the branding and the marketing, but they are working every day to keep the community fed and clothed and with jobs and with, like you said, financial literacy and, um, uh, actually reading and writing literacy and digital literacy, and a lot of those groups and people, which I've come to really appreciate in my older years, really just get up and do the job every day and don't have necessarily the big signs, but their doors are always open. And I think we saw that a lot during the pandemic. And particularly, I live in Calle 24, which is the historical arts and Latino district in San Francisco. And I just felt really held for that community and really doing my part to keep the community up because I saw other people keeping the community up. So, I mean, like, there's a long list, of course, that I could list of big name people, but I think the power of any individual to just do something on their block or do something within their communities, no matter how big or small, is really the biggest power that we can do for any collective that's out there. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
No, that's good. That's good. Again, it's one thing to just acknowledge that that is happening, and I'm glad that you mentioned the big name part because that's definitely, I think, contributes to those conversations when we say things like, and no one's doing nothing about this, or people are just ignoring this issue, and I think that it does point back to the fact that sometimes somebody is absolutely not only dedicated to it, but giving it real energy, and it just could be a matter of them not being as visible as the folks who aren't giving that energy, right? Like you mentioned, the marketing, it could be simply a matter of them not having the means to, if you will, have a billboard, but they nonetheless are doing something in the community, impacting lives, impacting change, creating change, and then people just aren't privy of it because it's not on the big screen, so to speak. So I hear that a lot too. Yeah. Any thoughts for you, Donovan? Folks that you've seen doing a whole lot, but maybe just not it being very visible, and things that we can do even personally to contribute more to what's happening, even if we don't get a lot of help from the outside to make things happen in our community.
Yeah, I do. I see, Edward Moore, James Spankola, um, even Shakira at Booker T.
Hmm.
They're all like you don't see a lot of the work that they do. You hear some of it, but they don't really get as much acknowledgement as they should because they do a lot behind closed doors for a lot of people. And I think also like with people with businesses need more training in running businesses. Everybody just has an idea and wants to put it out there as fast as possible, but nobody has the education of how to maintain a business and how to budget their business. Like they have all these programs that try to teach you certain things, but they don't relay the information in like some for somebody like that doesn't have any type of like how do I say this doesn't have any type of knowledge about running a business, or they just have the idea. So
Right.
like, I would say like all these programs that we have that we can go to and learn and get the information, some people can retain it, some people can't. I think like the program should come with a coach. All the programs that they have, they should come with like a coach that comes with building your business for a couple of months.
Right. Right.
So like yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, I would like to see that though. That's something I want to see. Like instead of trying to give a thousand people a certain amount of money, just make the amount larger and focus on like 100 people instead of thousands of people at first, and coach those 100 people, because a lot of the, like they say, a lot of businesses fail in the first few years because people don't have the coaching. So if you have somebody that's coaching you for the first like 9 months, 6 months, like, and letting you see everything, like the ups and downs of everything, um and you know, like the trial and error, like somebody to walk you through the trial and error, um so you can better your business and have a business longer than most people say that you're supposed to have. Yeah, I would like to see something like that. Like, you know,
Right.
some people get really coached, like on how to, and like, you know, like with inflation and, you know, the products going up higher, so people don't think about none of that. They don't think about the pandemics and stuff. So they say that we're supposed to go into another pandemic within 2 years, next 2 years. So like right now would be the time to like really coach people, because if you have 100 people instead of 1,000 people, you can focus on those 100 people. You can break those 100 people in the groups of 10, and you know, just coach everybody in groups of 10. But you reach more people, and I think I just think it would be better
Right.
if
Right.
a lot more people would be more successful with a lot more coaching.
Right. Right. I hear that. I hear that, you know, and I think that a lot of that, one, can be or is available within in the community, if we can, you know, take the time to do that. Honestly, it sometimes it does, excuse me, come down to resources, because coaching does require time. Coaching does require, you know. Time during each week or time during each month that people can actually dedicate to that. And so that's been, you know, that's definitely acknowledged as one of the obstacles for folks, to get coaching. Also, I know that coaching can be, you know, expensive in different ways, whether it's the initial fee, whether it's ongoing fees, whether it's, you know, the time that we may have to give up for that coaching. Sometimes it's in certain spaces physically, but it's not in other spaces physically. And so definitely, hearing the need for coaching, but also, you know, sometimes it can be an obstacle for folks to actually get it, even if it's available. I know. Fortunately, I am connected with folks like, again, Terry does coaching around entrepreneurship. Someone just hit me yesterday from school that I met in college. Wanted to get help out with folks who are doing communication, or rather, folks who want help with communication, and getting coaching around that, and getting maybe some coursework around types of things like that. And so it's always like this. You know, a matter of connection, finding the resources, finding the people who are doing it, finding the folks that honestly work for you, because we can have the information, but if it's delivered by someone that doesn't help us in particular, or it doesn't have us in mind in particular, it could be hard to get the right information from the right person. Um, but at the end of the day, yeah, it's definitely out there. You know, I definitely want to again continue to point folks towards YouTube and finding the folks who are doing things both locally and nationally, sometimes internationally, around helping us to take accountability for our actions, building community, taking accountability for building community, that are useful and helpful and profitable for ourselves, and our families. People acknowledging, like, you know, these types of things are possible. You know, I think a big thing that we have to acknowledge is a lot of people don't think that there's a way to do it, you know, without doing something illegal, without, you know, getting involved in some things that are sketchy. But if we can find the ways by which we can empower ourselves as a community, and get the necessary resources from working together, you know, people can see that that is possible. We can definitely see a lot of people um, being impacted by that understanding and by those resources that are out there. Um, but I did want to just take that time to connect with y'all. Again, I know we had threw out an email poll last week about folks being able to connect this week. I know that we got one response. Nadia, did you actually get anything back? Who that person was?
I haven't, but I
Uh-huh.
set up a Google Calendar.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we do want to connect with y'all tomorrow. There's actually some events. Actually, there's a few events coming on this week that we wanted to put on you guys' radar. I know that there's a thing happening today with Miss Cheryl Davis, who leads the Human Rights Commission currently. She's actually doing an event at 12 o'clock. I don't have the flyer right in front of me, but it is happening today. I know tomorrow we did want to connect with you guys if anyone was available in the afternoon. And then in the evening, YCD is going to be having a education showcase, showcasing the events. Okay, cool. Showcasing the events that and the programs that YCD has around education. So that is something that we can connect at in person. If anyone is available tomorrow evening, I did put that in the WhatsApp chat as well. And then I want to say there's definitely one on Friday. I think that Miss Cheryl Davis also is going to be participating in around poetry, and that will be at the African American. Actually, that may be Thursday night too. African American Arts and Cultural Center, and so that will be going on this week as well. And so definitely, there's a lot going on, a lot that we can again potentially benefit from if we're able to again dedicate time to those things. And then again, next week we'll be having, if I'm not mistaken, Vanessa Johnson Russell will be coming, and she actually heads an organization called Love Never Fails. She's been the executive director of that organization, if I'm not mistaken, for about 12 years. They do work both in the East Bay as well as in San Francisco, particularly around combating human trafficking, but it has spread into addressing some issues around homelessness, as well as education as well. And so I definitely want you guys to be here for that for next Wednesday, and make sure to chime in on the different, check it out if you guys can't make it. It'll be available on YouTube afterwards. But when she's here, definitely chime in so that you can ask any types of questions. We'll be making sure to put special emphasis on questions around the fiscal sponsorship, as well as, once someone does escape fiscal, but no longer wants this fiscal sponsorship and being completely financially independent. We'll be talking with her about that as well. She spoke to us last cohort about creating a board. So we'll also be talking about the board of directors and how that can be created, but also giving special attention to questions around like the annual dates and annual applications and registration, things that has to happen for the organization. So if no one has any questions, we can wrap up for today. But yeah, if anyone has any, please let me know before we do leave and part ways. Okay, cool. So we'll again be connecting Wednesday for whoever's available tomorrow. I think we have at least one person that will be available tomorrow. And then tomorrow evening, if anyone can come through to the YCD event, please come through. And then again, anything, if nothing else, we'll definitely be connecting tomorrow, next Wednesday, about with Miss Vanessa Russell. So I will be talking with y'all soon. And That's my wife texting me. So I will talk with y'all soon, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the near future. Okay, cool. I'm gonna be there. Awesome. Have a good one, y'all.